Welcome back to my Colorado Mountain Garden and Homestead. And I'm just going to show you some of the things you're going to need. Um, I am growing in 1 gallon containers, like what you see here in front of you. I got mine at Sam's Club. I got 3 for just a little over $12. You can grow in whatever size container, but everything I'm going to tell you is going to be based upon these 1 gallon containers. And you can buy kits if you want, where you basically buy them and use them and toss them out. And those are about $20 a kit. Some places are more expensive. So this is what I'm using. Now, if you watched the other videos, you saw that I had drilled holes, and this was for the oyster mushrooms. And those were 1/2 inch holes. And I kind of did them in a diamond pattern. Should say Bob did them in a diamond pattern. So I had 4 on one side and 4 on the other side. I may not get things fruiting through all of them. You need something to cover those holes with. And the suggestion is surgical tape. So I did buy surgical tape. I don't have that with me right now, but I just want you to know. Mine will be going into like a shelving unit that's kind of like a little greenhouse, so it has a cover over it when they start fruiting, or when we start seeing pinning happen and I take the surgical tape off. And this is going to be both for the lion's mane as well as the oyster. If you don't have that set up, then you're going to need to cover them once they start pinning and you pull your tape off with some sort of bag. At that point in time, you kind of want it to have a little bit of light. You don't want it to be in total darkness. So this is my 1 gallon container, and I just want to show you, this clear bag right here is a 10-gallon garbage bag, basically. And the big thing is you want to try and keep your bag off of the mushrooms, because you're going to get condensation on this bag, and you really don't want it sitting all the time. Now, it's okay if you're going to just be spraying with a spray bottle your mushrooms. Some people don't even use a bag, but with the grow kits, I have found that they do better with a bag on them. So if you're growing from a grow kit, so you'll have to put your holes. Here's your container. The next important thing is everything needs to be sterilized. This is just rubbing alcohol. And I have it in a spray bottle. And I also use vinyl gloves. You'll see some videos where they don't use gloves at all, but I'm using gloves. I spray the gloves with alcohol before I start dealing with anything that I'm doing, and that's just to keep any contamination down. So, alcohol. Washing your containers, you can use bleach, but you don't want to spray bleach directly on any sort of substrate or anything like that. So, here's the next thing. You need some type of substrate. And these are, like I said, these are my hardwood pellets. It's best to use hardwood. I'm going to be growing lion's mane and oyster, and they both do well in hardwood pellets. Oysters also do well in straw. But with the straw, to pasteurize it, you need to make sure it's in smaller pieces, like 4-inch pieces. And a lot of people will put it in an empty, clean trash can and use their weed eater to break that down. You can purchase it cut smaller as pet bedding and things like that. But you want to use straw, not hay. So it can be any kind of straw, but not hay. And then for that, you have to put it into a big boiling pot, and then hang it up to drain and things like that. So with these, all I'm going to be doing is adding boiling water to it. And it's kind of like these are basically sawdust. They're just compacted sawdust. And so versus what I've seen online with the straw seems to be wetter, or if they're using just wood chips. And so a lot of people will put holes, and this is something I didn't do, in the bottom of their container, and then they set it on top of something so that the excess water can drain out. And that's pretty much going to be done in the first few times. I chose this way. I don't have a big place outside and it's cold. I'm in the mountains. I'm not going to be out doing straw, just because to me it's more complicated. All I do is pour hot boiling water over these. What's in this bag is going to do 2 of those. It's 4 cups, and then I'll weigh them, and I'll tell you that why I weigh them afterwards. But so this is 8 cups, so I will get 2 of my 1 gallon buckets out of it. In addition to that, for each bucket, I am adding between 3/4 and 1 cup of wheat bran. I chose to purchase wheat bran that is food grade. There's pet stores that have bran, or maybe at your feed store or whatever. I chose to use the stuff that's for humans, that humans can consume, and that's just because I feel that it's cleaner. Same thing for these pellets. These are for my pellet smoker. Figure if I'm cooking meat and stuff like that, that it has other approvals versus getting a pellet that's for your pellet stove. And again, don't use pine. You want to use a hardwood. So it'd just be like probably all oak or something like that. Then the next thing I use for this is gypsum. And I have a box of gypsum because I amend my potato beds every spring with a little bit of gypsum. It's just something I've been doing since I've been growing potatoes. This is the brand that I typically buy. You need, for each container, 2 tablespoons. So for each gallon container, 2 tablespoons of gypsum. Once you have all of this mixed, whether you're doing 1 container or 2, you want to weigh it for its dry weight. So whatever that runs. And then you're going to weigh out in grams once again. And again, if you want to just use cups, whatever, that's fine. So if you're using 4 cups of pellets and you want to use 4 cups of water, that's fine. I'd probably put a little bit more water in, just because you don't really know how much that is. I have a scale because I'm a baker, so I weigh out everything in grams. And a lot of the videos say it doesn't have to be an exact science, and I truly believe that. But for me, I'm kind of OCD in that area, and I just like to know what's going on. So, to all my ingredients, once I weigh them out, their dry weight, I'm going to get water. I am on well water, so I don't have to worry about chlorine and stuff. I haven't seen a lot of videos worried about chlorine being in your water, but just something to think about. I will boil the weight of that water plus a little bit more, because I have found that, especially with these hardwood pellets, they absorb a lot, so it was still kind of dry. So I have a big enough container, and again, everything's always sterilized before I put it in there. In the case of the oyster mushrooms, I did 2 separate ones, so I just used a big bowl, and I put in 4 cups of pellets, 1 cup of bran on the one that I made with bran. And I remember I made the one, if you watch my other video, you'll see I didn't have bran for the first one, so I just used gypsum, and I did 2 tablespoons. But the way I'm going to go forward right now is 4 cups of pellets, 3/4 to a cup of bran, and 2 tablespoons of the gypsum. Then you're going to bring your water to a boil. You're going to pour that all over the pellets that are in a big enough pan because they're going to swell. So if you think of a gallon being 8 cups and I used 4, I think a gallon's 8 cups. No, I think it's more than that. I don't know. It's probably 16 cups. I don't know. Anyways, go look it up on the internet. Sorry. I just wanted to get this video done. And then you're going to cover that. And when I say cover it, once you mix that in, you can use like a spoon or whatever to kind of stir everything around. I would use a metal spoon and again, spray it with some rubbing alcohol or wipe it down with a paper towel that has rubbing alcohol in it so that it is sterilized. Stir it around. And for me, I put a piece of foil over the top because the bowl that I was using didn't have a lid. If I had a lid, I'd put a lid on it. These are going to be probably in some sort of tub or tote because I'm going to try and do a batch of 2 at the same time. And my bowl's not going to be big enough. You pour the boiling water over, you seal it up, and and this is called the pasteurization process. You are going to leave it covered and undisturbed for an hour and a half. Then it's okay if you want to open it up, kind of stir it around. And at that point in time, because every pellet is going to be different, you're going to figure out whether you need to add a little bit more water. And then again, if I'm adding the water, I will boil it and then kind of put it on. When I did the first one, I didn't need to add extra water because it didn't have the bran in it. But when I did the one with the bran, I ended up having to add another 1/2 cup of water. And you're going to think that this substrate is too dry, but that you don't want it super wet. That's why if you watch the other videos where people are using straw, they have to let it drain down, and then they put the holes in the bucket to kind of let even more drain out. When you do the straw, at least everybody I saw put straw and then layered the grain spawn in, straw, layered the grain spawn in. The grain spawn that I'm using, I got from North Shore. I got both the lion's mane and the oyster from them. Is about a 6-pound bag is how it came to me. And I used 1/2 pound per 1 gallon container. So if you're using bigger containers like a 5 gallon, then you're going to be using enough for the 5 gallons. So this is 1 gallon at 1/2 pound. And then you have to be able to stir it around. Most of the people that are using the big buckets don't stir it around. Even when they're using the pellets, they're putting a layer of pellets in, putting the grain spore down, or grain spawn, I should say. The grain spawn down, putting some more pellets, putting grain spawn down. So it's like a lasagna. Since these are smaller buckets, for me it was just easier to mix it all in once my pellets had cooled down, because you don't want to add grain spawn to something that's like even 90 degrees. It's better to be like around room temp or 80 degrees or less. So after you let it sit for its hour and a half for pasteurization. You can go in and mix it around, but then you probably are going to want to let it sit, and I still let it sit covered for another hour. So it's not something that happens really fast. You can let your pasteurized pellets and wheat bran and gypsum sit overnight as long as they're covered. So you could do your pasteurization and just leave it overnight, come back to the next day, mix it around, and then add your grain spawn. Then you cover it, or you put it in a darker area. Doesn't have to be super dark, but a darker area, and you saw what I did. I covered it with a paper bag. And you got to let it do its thing, and it's going to can take up to 2 weeks before it's fully colonized and you start having some pinning going on. For me up here, I don't know how long it's going to take. My house, we've got the fireplace really going and it's not super cold outside like it's going to be getting, because we're supposed to only be like 17 tomorrow. The inside of our house could be as high as 74, but it usually runs between 68 and 72 when we have the fire going. At night, we turn the tent. We don't keep the fire going at night. We just let the furnace go, and the furnace is set at, I think, 65, and it might be 68 now. We're getting old. But it'll go down and then it'll turn on. So, my house is always going to be probably under 80. Even during the summer, my house rarely gets over 80 unless we're having some really hot days up here. So I hope this all makes sense. Again, I'll put a link to the Facebook page, and you can ask any questions, and we'll just keep going forward from here. But again, it's for a 1 gallon container. It's 4 cups of pellets, 3/4 to 1 cup of wheat bran, and 2 tablespoons of gypsum. And then you're going to be using a 1/2 pound of your grain spore. And just an FYI, the grain spore that I bought was about 6 pounds. So I can get 12 of these out of one bag. So I'm going to have mushrooms for a while. It says that you should use them up within 4 months, I think, for one of them, and 6 months for the other one. They have to be stored in the refrigerator, and it's very beneficial to you if you have a way to seal the top of the grain spore bag, because it's just in a mushroom grow bag, to seal out so that the air's not getting in. It still has a filter patch on it, so it will get some air, but otherwise you really need to tape that top up or whatever as you open it each time to use it. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Happy gardening, happy growing mushrooms if you choose to do this. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed here that I do things well enough that we actually get mushrooms.